Disney once made a movie so dark, kids screamed during test screenings. Executives cut entire scenes of horror, buried the film in the vault for over a decade, and hoped audiences would forget it ever happened. The movie was The Black Cauldron, and it's still remembered as the film Disney tried to erase. Now, you've probably watched a Disney movie, whether it's The Lion King, Aladdin, or Frozen. They're bright, colorful, and family-friendly. That's the Disney formula. But imagine sitting down for what you think is another animated adventure and instead getting zombies, death magic, and a skeletal demon king. That's what audiences faced in 1985. And if you like uncovering the weird stories Disney doesn't want you to remember, make sure you subscribe. That way, you won't miss the next deep dive we pull out of the vault. By the late 1970s, Disney animation was struggling. Walt was gone, and the magic felt a little faded. The studio had been leaning heavily on talking animals and sitcom-style comedies, and they were desperate to be seen as cool and innovative again.
What's all the whispering about, huh?
They needed an epic, a Snow White for a new generation. So they bought the rights to a popular 5-book fantasy series called The Chronicles of Prydain, basically the Lord of the Rings for the middle school crowd. It had swords, sorcery, a destined hero, and an evil horned king. What could possibly go wrong? As it turns out, just about everything. What they got was a nightmare. From the beginning, The Black Cauldron was ambitious. It would be Disney's first 70mm widescreen film since Sleeping Beauty. It had Dolby surround sound, and it would be the first Disney movie to experiment with computer animation. One idea even planned for the Cauldron-born skeleton army to literally leap off the screen using hologram projection. Imagine Disney's first horror 3D experience. The idea was abandoned, too expensive, but the ambition shows just how much they wanted this to be huge. To understand why this movie was cursed from the start, you have to know that Disney animation in the 70s was in the middle of a creative civil war. You had the Disney veterans, the first generation of artists who had been mentored by Walt's legendary 9 old men. They were proud, experienced, and stuck in their ways. Then you had the young guns, a new wave of hungry animators ready to prove themselves, led by a rising star named Don Bluth. They felt the veterans were holding them back. Finally, you had the CalArts kids, fresh-faced and inexperienced talents like a very young Tim Burton, who were seen as brash outsiders by almost everyone. The tension was thicker than the fog in Prydain.
My power cannot die. Curse you!
When The Black Cauldron finally went into production, this Cold War went hot. The budget, initially set for $15 million, began to balloon. The directors were constantly changing. The young guns and the veterans clashed over every decision. A frustrated Don Bluth, tired of the delays, finally walked out in 1979, taking nearly a dozen key animators with him to start his own rival studio.
I always get blamed for these things.
Disney was left with half the staff and even less experience. The chaos continued.
Ouch!
Tim Burton was brought on to create concept art, and he delivered some truly incredible gothic and nightmarish designs for the Horned King and his minions. The studio brass, of course, took one look at it and said it was far too weird, scrapping his work entirely.
Hi, Tim.
This is Tim Burton. Another one of our people here.
The irony, in 1985, Burton released his directorial debut, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And while Disney's Black Cauldron flopped, Pee-wee outperformed it at the box office. A Disney reject had beaten Disney. But here's where the cauldron really starts to bubble over. In 1984, there's a massive corporate shakeup. The new studio heads are Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg, 2 executives from the world of live action who knew next to nothing about animation. One of their first acts was to watch a test screening of the nearly finished Black Cauldron. It did not go well.
No, Googie not let his friend die.
Don't jump! Wait! No!
The infamous Cauldron-born sequence where the undead army rises was so graphic and intense that parents were seen grabbing their children and literally running out of the theater in terror. The Horned King's Cauldron-born army rising from the dead was so gruesome, it horrified executives.
All the dead of centuries past.
Rumors spread that the original cut showed decapitations and dismemberment, imagery that could have made this the first Disney film rated PG-13, or even R. And we know those cuts were real because storyboards and early adaptations show what was removed. Taran, the young hero, originally got struck in the face by a claw, leaving him bloodied and dazed. Guards were killed on screen. Scenes lingered on the Horned King's undead army, making them even more disturbing. Horrified, Katzenberg demanded the film be cut. When the producers explained that you can't just cut animation, Katzenberg, in a legendary power move, marched into the editing bay, grabbed the physical film reels, and started cutting the movie himself. The original version of those horror scenes hasn't been seen since, but we know they existed. In 1985, an early trailer for The Black Cauldron appeared on VHS copies of Pinocchio. That trailer shows snippets of the longer, darker, cauldron-born sequence that never made it to theaters. Every now and then, animation cells from those lost scenes surface at auctions, little fragments of the Disney movie Too Scary to Survive. By the time the film limped into theaters in July 1985, it had ballooned to a $44 million budget, the most expensive animated movie ever made. It bombed. Badly. In its second week, The Black Cauldron was outgrossed by the Care Bears movie, and Disney was so embarrassed, they quietly locked the film away. For over a decade, it was the only Disney classic you couldn't buy on VHS. But burying it only made fans more curious. Bootleg VHS copies circulated, rumors of a lost horror cut spread. Finally, in 1998, Disney quietly released it on home video.
The Black Cauldron.
The Black Cauldron. The Black Cauldron. The Black Cauldron.
And a funny thing happened. People bought it. Over 5 million copies sold, and the film began gaining cult status.
The Black Cauldron can never be destroyed.
Today, The Black Cauldron is remembered not as a triumph, but as the dark Disney misstep that accidentally helped pave the way for the Disney Renaissance. So, was The Black Cauldron really too scary for kids? Or just too weird for Disney? All we know is that somewhere in the vault, those lost horror scenes are still locked away, waiting. Stay curious, stay buttery.